and welcome to a brand new OET writing lesson. And this is to answer the question, should I add connectors to my OET writing letter? So you may actually be wondering what connectors are, or you may be thinking, well, I know what connectors are. Will I score more points if I show off my great skill and demonstrate that I can use these wonderfully in my letter? What happens if I use them incorrectly, though? These are all questions you might be having, or you might be thinking, will I lose marks if I don't use them? Should I be using them? What should I do? And can we go over some good examples? And yes, of course we can, and we can answer all these questions, and that's what we're going to do in this lesson. My name's Sona, I'm your online OET tutor with Bose Learning, and I'm a premium preparation provider of the OET, so thank you very much for joining me today. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. What are connectors in general? I mean, not just for the OET, but in English. What do we use them for? What are they? Let's look at some examples. Well, we can use them for a variety of reasons, and it's basically to connect or to join information together. And this is especially useful in your OET writing because you have to combine notes, of course. So this is where it comes into the OET. But let's take a look at some examples just in general. So we can use them to add emphasis to what you're saying, significantly, notably, clearly. Those are some examples here. We can use them to define the time frame. So firstly, secondly, subsequently, finally. We can use them to show contrast, however, despite, in spite of, that kind of thing. They can be used to show cause and effect, therefore, consequently, as a result of. And of course, we can use them to join information together, and those are called conjunctions, and, but, or, because. So now you know what they are. Should you show off and use them in your OET letter? Will you score more marks if you do? Well, you've got to use a little bit of judgment here and think, is this connector actually needed, or is it just extra? And if it's extra, we don't need it. So if it's important to the meaning of the sentence, we keep it in, and if not, we don't. We don't want to just show off and stick them in randomly for decoration. That's not what we want to do. So really use your judgment and think, is this connector needed? So I've given you a couple of examples here. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to read over them and have a think, are they actually needed or not? So, what do we think? Well, actually, in both cases, these connectors do absolutely nothing to add information to the reader. They don't enhance the sentences in any way. In fact, it would be much better just to use a simple, natural kind of connector like and. Don't show off, just be natural and professional. The patient responded well to the initial treatment and their blood pressure has remained stable. The patient's condition has improved significantly and their respiratory rate has decreased. That's far easier to read, it's far simpler, and that's what you need for your OET. Let's try another example. I've got 4 for you here. Are these connectors needed? 30 seconds to have a read and decide. Okay, so in the first one, it's actually okay in terms of medication. You can put that in. But actually, why write one, two, three, four words when you can just put it at the end and use one? Mrs. Smith will need the following medication, and then you list it. So don't use four words when one is sufficient. This adds absolutely nothing given the above. We don't need to say that. Just get to the point and say that Mrs. Smith will need to be closely monitored. And again, here it's lovely, it's academic, it's nice in style for a journal or something like that, but not for a professional OET letter because it doesn't add anything, it just adds extra time to the reader to read it. And that's not what we want to do. So Jason Brown will need to be booked onto a course of physiotherapy. Get to the point. Be kind to your reader. Your reader hasn't got time to read all these extra words when all you need is this main information. So don't add anything that doesn't improve what you're writing. Okay, next question then. What happens if I use them incorrectly? So if you use it incorrectly, if you use a connector incorrectly, then yes, it is going to affect your score, perhaps in genre and style or in the language section. Let me give you some examples. We don't want to be using informal connectors, like, for example, the patient experienced mild discomfort after the procedure, but apart from that, there have been no other adverse reactions reported. That's spoken English, it's not written English. Another example of spoken English, the test results came back negative. Meanwhile, the patient's energy levels have noticeably increased. We don't want to do that. We want to keep things professional and formal. The patient experienced mild discomfort after the procedure, but no other adverse reactions have been reported. So we just take it and make that passive. The test results came back negative for any infections, and the patient's energy levels have noticeably increased. Do you see how that's so much easier to read? And that's what you want to try and do in your letter. Another thing you want to avoid is academic connectors like hence or thereafter. The treatment has been effective, hence we expect the patient's recovery to progress smoothly. No, too academic. The surgery was successful, thereafter the patient was closely monitored. No, far too academic. Again, just keep it natural and professional. The treatment has been effective and we expect the patient's recovery to progress smoothly. And the surgery was successful and the patient was closely monitored for any signs of complications. So, professional, simple things to keep in mind. Let's improve then these examples of incorrect or inappropriate connectors and sentences. So I'm going to give you some examples coming up, and I'm going to give you some time to rewrite them so they are more appropriate. So we have 5 sentences here. Please rewrite them so that the incorrect, informal, perhaps, connector is more formal, or we take away anything not needed. Here we go, 5 minutes to do that. If you finish before, just skip forward. Okay, let's take a look at these improvements then. Number one, Mr. Ahmed was admitted to hospital due to a fall down the stairs. Never start a sentence with because or and, it's far too informal. Instead, use a connector in between to explain what happened. Hence, here is the academic, far too academic word. Instead, we're changing it to a relative clause. Mrs. Sada has been diagnosed with hypertension for which she has been prescribed metformin. You could just say and has therefore been prescribed metformin if you want to. Here we've got this informal spoken English. Apart from that, take that away and say his vital signs were otherwise normal. Here, what's wrong later on, far too much like spoken English. Be more formal and use subsequently. Mr. Jameson was treated with pain relief and discharged home. He was subsequently readmitted. And then number 5, here, as well as this, in addition, far more professional. He requires a wheelie walker for support. In addition, please provide daily visits. Okay, so those are some examples of how you can use them nicely. What about some more good examples of connectors? Now, the best place to check is the OET sample answers. Here's one for you. Have a look through, 1 minute, pick out all the connectors you can find. Okay, and what you'll notice, interestingly, is that there are actually very few, and the ones that we use are nice and simple. Um, we've got something like who presented rather than a connector. It's a relative clause. Then we've got more ones here. For which, for example, for which she self-prescribed. Sorry, I know the arrows blocking that slightly. We do have some ands as well. In fact, quite a few ands in different places. And again, it's so simple, isn't it? So what you'll notice is that actually most of the connectors are really simple, with maybe in addition as the fanciest one you can see. So don't be tempted to show off and use really fancy pants connectors. You don't need them. Don't use them if they don't add anything and just add extra words. We don't want to be doing that. Keep it simple, keep it professional, and keep it easy to read, and you'll be fine. If you like this, I'd be so happy if you can help me grow this channel by subscribing and sharing this with a friend or a colleague. I'd really appreciate your help with that. And if you do want more information about gaining an insight into the OET and what's needed, why not check out my pre-recorded courses? They're all on Udemy, and I'm going to put in some discount codes for you at the bottom, so check those out as well. Finally, if you'd like to sign up for a free newsletter of all things OET, you'll get a regular dose of things straight to your inbox, and I'll put the link up for that as well. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully see you again soon. Take care. Bye bye.